Hello, friends. We are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. The views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live-action role-play scenario. All that being said, enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Wayne McRoy. First, a couple of announcements. Check out our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. That's also the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We feature some of your favorite content creators there. Watch the Forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana. That's available on Tubi and multiple streaming platforms. Also, always be sure to download all our podcast episodes directly through Spreaker if you listen through any podcast provider. We are booking guests for February. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Wayne McRoy. He is an author and researcher who explores the hidden agendas linking modern technologies to their ancient alchemical roots in antiquity. Wayne, welcome back. How you doing?
Good, Chris. Good to be here. Always a pleasure, my friend.
It's always great to talk to you. I love our conversations. Really enjoy the research you're doing. And today we're going to dive into what you're calling Synchromystic metadata and its effects on the human mind. As I began my spiritual journey of awareness, I started to realize how not only there's a synchromystic element to our reality, but our reality may fundamentally operate off of what we can only describe in our modern age as algorithms or some sort of simulated reality. And these understandings are just based on our current technological level of awareness. But there's also a layer of reality that has been overlaid over our baseline reality, and it's constantly evolving from radio and television and now social media, the internet, learning algorithms, and artificial intelligence. And it's become extremely difficult at times to navigate information online, as well as do the kind of work that we're doing, like sharing research. And when we combine the possibility that our technology is being used in alchemical or even ritualistic ways, that opens up some pretty insane possibilities, which I'm sure we're going to get into today. So I'm very much looking forward to learning more about your research and all about synchromystic metadata. But before we do, it's been a while since you've been on. Remind the audience a little bit about yourself, where they can find you, and what brought you to this work that you're doing.
All right, man. Always appreciated. People could find me over at my website. I've centralized everything there at www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com. What brought me to this was a lot of different things that I had seen going on in the world around me. I've always had a very curious mind and have always been drawn to the esoteric and these types of things. So through the course of the years, many different things that have happened in my life, a confluence of events, brought me looking down these various rabbit holes. And I like to tell people I accidentally became an expert in occult philosophy because of that. And that pretty much describes where we're coming from with this. So what I've attempted to do is deconstruct some of what we see going on in the reality around us and come up with terms or names for these different bits of information out there in the information field, the overall general information field, so that we can better understand what it is we're talking about and connect the dots. So I have come to recognize this as what I like to call synchromystic metadata. And it is always out there in the ether for people to pick apart in order to connect the dots and see things out there encoded in the esoteric background of all of this, in the term that I like to use, which is the zeitgeist, which is a German word which means spirit of the time. And I like that term because there is a spiritual component to all of this that oftentimes gets overlooked. Now, everybody seems to agree that there is this broad information field that exists. It's just they call it different things depending upon what type of a lens of observation you're looking at it from. Now, in the occult, oftentimes they'll refer to this as the Akashic record, or they call it ancestral memory, this kind of thing. In the sciences, they'll call this genetic memory or epigenetic memory. They will call it, depending upon another frame of reference that you look at it as, through the field of physics, they call it the quantum information field. So they refer to this, they all agree, all of these various different places and positions agree that this information field exists, but they don't agree on what to call it. So I like to apply the term zeitgeist to this because, like I said, there is a broader spiritual component to it that also takes precedent in many of these things. So when I'm talking about the zeitgeist, this is the greater information field. And when I'm talking about what I call synchromystic metadata, that is little disparate bits of information out there in the zeitgeist, in the information field, that point in a particular direction. So sometimes these things look disparate and unconnected, but they still have an influence on the unconscious human mind. And this influence it has on the unconscious human mind will at some point affect you subconsciously and alter your conscious behavior. Now, the premise that I come at this from is there exists in this world a power structure where at the very top, it's a pyramid scheme, right? We all kind of agree on that. It's all kind of centralized control from the top down. Now, what I've identified through the course of my studies is that at the tippy top of this power pyramid in this world, there exists a group of dark occultists who run things. That's what I like to call them. And just beneath them in the pecking order are what they call their little minions that run around and get things done, the technocrats. Now, these are oftentimes considered their useful idiots who get things done. And many people might have a problem with this type of an approach. But I think it's demonstrable when you really delve into these things that at the topmost levels, there are occultists who have used the dark side of things to influence the power structure of this world. So when you keep that in mind, you know that at the topmost levels, they are aware, well aware of some of these occult principles that they use and they leverage against the masses for purposes of control and advancing their own agendas. And then they also have the class of people that go out and get it done. They have the movers and shakers, the policymakers of this world, whom I call the technocrats. Now, that's just how I observe this. You could apply whatever terms to this you would like. But certainly, it's demonstrable. This is how it happens, from top-down control. Now, there's also, aside from that, a spiritual component to this, as I had alluded to. So oftentimes it would seem that there's a beyond human intelligence that guides and directs these things, and sometimes puts these bits of information out there in the greater zeitgeist to influence the human mind. And this is wherein things get a little bit more devious, because when you realize that there's powers beyond human involved in this, then you begin to understand a little bit clearer some of the evils that have been done by these dark occultists who run things, and of course the spiritual components that give them their marching orders and direct and steer the greater zeitgeist at times. And then these technocrat minions that run around and do things, the policymakers, the names you're probably familiar with at the top levels of the pecking order here in this world that are sometimes associated with various agendas. So when you understand that, what we do is we look at these little bits of synchromystic metadata, and we could connect some dots there and show the occult underpinnings of a lot of this. And myself and my friend Richard Willett over in the UK have recently launched a brand new podcast called Synchromystic, wherein we attempt to decipher some of this out there in this greater information field and point in the directions that it's leading to. So I know that's a lot to kind of frame this conversation with, but did you want to go in any particular direction here, like any particular types
Well,
of...
maybe we could start with where our modern technological alchemical infiltration really began, and maybe a little bit of a time frame that this has occurred over.
Okay, well, this stuff has been present with us from the very beginning of our civilization. So when you really go and look back, you look back at all these old alchemical principles and the old sciences, the old natural sciences. Well, these things have been understood by this controlling priestcraft, this priest class, throughout all of our recorded time. So they have kept some of these secrets of the ages hidden from mankind, and they've misapplied and misused them for their own greedy agendas. And this is what has gone on. So we've had this division in classes in this world. This creates a type of class warfare where you have the quote unquote elites, and then you have the rest of us. And they have hidden purposefully a lot of the information that they know about the old natural sciences and alchemical sciences from us. And a lot of this is coming back into the light of day in the modern era with some of the advances in our technologies and our capabilities. And certainly, all of these things we're seeing happen on a technological level today are derived from some of these old mystery school teachings about these old sciences. And the problem with this is what has happened is in the modern era, a lot of this has been misapplied and misappropriated by these people for their own agendas. So it's all about control at the end of the day. These people want to become gods in no uncertain terms, and they see the use of high technology as their way to do that, and the misapplication of these principles to do that as to how to get it done. And of course, this always culminates in what we call the transhumanist notion. So that's where we're heading with this. And all of these different disparate bits of information out there seem to point in that direction. So it is an agenda as old as time itself. But the big turning point in it that I've come across every time I go throughout my research looking at this and going back through the history of the occult and occultism and the various secret society groups, I always find turning points at very particular points in history. And one of the big turning points in history is in the mid to late 1800s, when a lot of these notions came to see the light of day and have been presented out there in different forums where they hadn't been present before. And what has happened is they've taken these principles, the original alchemical principles that were intended for good and intended for the understanding of the workings of nature, and they've inverted them and turned them completely upside down on their head in order to create a completely synthetic reality. And that's what these people are all about, these dark occultists at the top of the power structure. It's all about an artificial knockoff of the natural order that they can be the gods of. So that's what they've done. They've taken these principles and misapplied them with the inversion principle and put that firmly in place. So I always tell people, if you want a true definition of what Satanism is, it's the inversion principle. That is the pure doctrine of Satanism. So when you understand that, when people are saying it's a satanic conspiracy, they're not wrong, but maybe they're thinking about it from the wrong frame of reference. But it is the inversion principle applied. And that's what these people have done. They've taken these old occulted bits of knowledge of the natural sciences, and they've misapplied them for their own gains. And in so doing, they've caused the inversion of these processes, these natural processes. And they have created this situation that we have today, where we have this class disparity, we have this information disparity between the ruling class and the rest of us. And they do see themselves as a ruling class, and there's various reasons for this. But at any rate, that's kind of where I come from, my approach.
Before we get deeper into the manufactured level of synchromysticism that we deal with on a daily basis, let's go back to the natural order of things and how we experience synchronicity naturally. To the best of your ability, how would you describe the mechanics behind this? What do you believe is this form of communication? What is the purpose? Do you think it is some sort of intelligence that is guiding us either on a personal or even collective basis?
Well, like I said, there are spiritual components to this, and this falls back on various hierarchies of spiritual powers as explored by many thinkers, not only in the occult, but in the religious circles and framework as well. So you have these angelic orders of beings and these fallen angelic orders of beings that have some influence and sway here, and you have other spiritual entities, intelligences, forces, however you want to frame this, that guide and direct things like elementals that have been explored by Paracelsus and others, these powers that seem to have an effect here in this reality. And what it all boils down to is there's intelligent design present in this creation that we live in. There's an intelligent order. There are natural forces and processes and intelligences that guide and direct the building and the manifestation of things here. So when you understand that there's an intelligence inherent in all of it, and that would be the essence of and quality of life itself present in all of it, then you have a better and clearer picture of what we have here. Now, our modern day science, or scientism more rightly called, would have you believe that there's nothing other than this physical reality in which we live and exist and have our being. And that one day nothing exploded and became everything that we see and experience here. And that is the nature of reality, according to the materialists who want you to buy into that paradigm. Now, this is part of the control paradigm as well. They want you to think in terms of this physical reality being all that there is, and all phenomena could be explained away as some cause and effect sequence in this physical reality. Even things like consciousness. They want you to believe consciousness is little more than the byproduct of the electrochemical activity of the brain and brainstem. So if you believe that, then you're caught in what I like to call the hyper-materialist paradigm. And here's where the rub comes in with this. If they can thoroughly convince you that consciousness is nothing more than the byproduct of the electrochemical activity of your brain and brainstem, then theoretically, it could be reproduced via algorithm. And if it could be reproduced via algorithm, then your consciousness could live on in a machine. And this is where the transhumanist notion of things comes into being. And this is what they firmly want you to believe. They want you to believe you can live forever in some type of a digital realm that they've created, a synthetic realm, which is a cheap knockoff of the real deal here. And what I'm saying here essentially is this. If you study into occultism and into a lot of these old mystery school teachings and the cosmo conception of a lot of them, you will discover that they believe and they teach, and I can't say whether this is true or not, but there's people in positions of power in this world that believes this is true. So the things they do to act on it will affect all of us. So it's important you understand it. They believe that there is a subplane of this physical reality called the etheric realm, or the etheric world, the ether being a portion thereof. So essentially, what's being done is they are synthetically manufacturing a false etheric layer to this reality, and that is called the digital realm. It's called metaverse. It's called Web 3.0. That's what's going on in the background behind all of this. And this is where technology and occultism kind of meet in the middle on a lot of this stuff. So that is essentially what they're trying to produce. And if you dig deeply enough into some of these old occult teachings and belief systems, there's an important principle involved here. Because you see, if you look into, I like to use the Rosicrucian cosmo conception as a good example, because it delineates it pretty clearly for most people to understand. There's this stepping down phase from divine source into manifestation in physical reality. And through this process, the step just above where we are in the physical reality here, which is the lowest phase according to them, they say we live in the dense chemical region of physical reality, and just above us is this etheric region. Well, manifestation is a stepping down process. So in order for something to begin to manifest physically in this dense chemical region, first, it must begin to manifest in the etheric region. Thus, they want to build this digital etheric region, and it's a false knockoff. Now, I know this is probably a little deep and a bridge too far for some people, but what you need to understand is it doesn't matter if you believe it or not. There's people in positions of power in this world that do. And the things they do to act on their beliefs affect all of us. So it's important that you understand why and how they do the things they do. So this is the whole notion of why they are attempting to digitize everything, even human consciousness, because this falls into the category, if you delve into the realms of Hermetic science and the Kabbalah, this is the creation of what they call the world of shells. The world of shells being this gross materiality devoid of any spirit. And that's what they're attempting to create, because they could be the gods of that region, if that's the case. So I know that's a lot to take in, but I was wondering if you wanted to go any particular direction with any of that.
There's plenty of directions that we could go, but from everything that I've learned, our reality unfolds greatly based on our perception of things. And in our modern age, it's very easy to control perception, especially if you're a person that believes what you're seeing on the news, if you spend a lot of time on social media, watching TV, being brainwashed, this will affect your reality. And I like to link this to people's paranormal experiences, UFO sightings, alien encounters, where I've interviewed so many people who have had these experiences, but it seems to be heavily based on their perception at the time or even traumatic experiences that they've had. It seems if they start to have negative paranormal or metaphysical encounters, that will perpetuate itself and reflect itself in their daily lives as well. But on the other token, people I speak to who have a pretty bright outlook on life have these paranormal experiences usually have very positive experiences. And it seems to be all based on the way we view things at the time. But when we add in this perception management factor, there's all kinds of doors that can open, especially with what we're seeing, I believe, with this whole UFO phenomena.
Oh, most certainly. I agree with you there. And this is all part of it. And these are all bits of this synchromystic metadata that I'm talking about. So it affects some people differently than others, but it does have an effect on the unconscious human mind. And that's the important point here. So what you need to understand is things that were framed by the likes of Carl Jung about what he calls this information field that we're referring to here, that I like to call the zeitgeist. He calls it the collective unconscious. And that is a huge part of this. So they put symbols and signs and words and phrases and things like this out there for us to take in our unconscious mind, and it will affect us because we represent, I should say we recognize the archetype that's represented by that symbol, those words, etc., etc. And this is what I call the synchromystic metadata. So when you take in these little bits of metadata and your brain unconsciously connects the dots with these things, it affects your future behavior. And most people are completely unaware that this goes on. And it's a very, very complex type of way of thinking of this, but it could be broken down in some simple concepts. And that's what I'm attempting to do by trying to make this information available to people, give people tools that they could work with to recognize the patterns that emerge. Like, for example, we see repeat patterns going on all the time, don't we, in the world around us?
Yep.
Well, let's think back a couple months here. We have all of this UAP phenomenon, UFO phenomenon, all of these mystery drones. And notice the language they use to describe these mystery drones. Well, this is a direct allusion to the mystery schools. So it's mystery drones. They're trying to reconceptualize the concept of what this is and steer the human mind's thinking on this. So now when you see lights in the sky, you're not thinking, hey, that's UFOs, that's aliens up there, like they would have had you believe in prior times. Well, now they want you to think, oh, that's drones. Those are unidentified drones. So see how they affect your mind in subtle ways that maybe you don't recognize on a conscious level, but they know this, and that's why they've reapplied these types of terms. So this is all part of the greater pattern. What I was getting to here is we see this rise of appearances of these weird things in the sky. And then shortly after that, what do we have? Well, we have massive natural disaster wildfires. This is a repeated type of a pattern. If you go back, you look at the events of 2021, Australia was on fire. There was a flap just prior to that of UFO sightings, UAP sightings, and that phenomena being in the news media. Then Australia was on fire. And then we have all kinds of rollouts of these different, how should we say, pandemic type situations and things like that that always seem to occur in the timeline with this. Fast forward a little bit, we have UFO sightings again being frequently talked about in the media, and then the massive wildfires in Hawaii once again, and then talk of another pandemic or potential pandemic situation. It's a repeated pattern, you see. And I could demonstrate that. That's just 3 times now that we've seen within the past couple of years where we could recognize this same pattern. That's part of this. That's the Synchromystic metadata. It's pattern recognition. Now, what exactly does all this point to and mean? I don't have the exact answer to that yet, but I'm exploring and trying to figure this stuff out, putting the dots together to see. But you could see what patterns begin to emerge on the other side of that. When you recognize, hey, this is very similar to that event that happened then. Well, what happened next? And see, this is the problem we have in the modern era because our attention spans have been whittled down so much. We don't really remember exactly what happened next because it's constant, one thing after another in the news cycle that we see. And this is one of their favorite programming motifs, is the news media. So they use this to influence the human mind in a lot of subtle ways that maybe we don't recognize. So after, of course, these fires and just leading up to these fires, they pulled off an operation on New Year's Day here in America, a couple different things happening simultaneously. Of course, we have the terror incident in New Orleans, where the guy literally had an ISIS flag in the back of his truck. That seems to me to be a little problematic. I mean, seriously, why would you? How come nobody caught this? You know what I mean? The guy's driving around with an ISIS flag on his truck. Doesn't make a bit of sense. And then simultaneously, in Las Vegas, in front of the Trump Hotel, you had the Tesla Cybertruck explode into a fiery blaze fire, once again, kind of preordaining what was about to come in California. So you see all of these patterns emerge all the time. So this is telling me a lot of things. Because this occurred on New Year's Day, this is another important factor. They like to use different cycles of time to present different types of motifs into the greater zeitgeist. Well, they use this as a means of conveying the programming language that they intend to use for the year 2025. And 2025 is going to be a big year. I think that's been predicted many times in the past. It's been outlined in a lot of white papers and documents. They have big plans for this year. So they're trying to kickstart all of this. And of course, the fire motif is nothing new to these people, these ones that control things, these dark occultists in this world. They consider themselves to be the philosophers of fire. They're the builders. They're the ones that get it done. It's not just a Granger commercial. This is what they believe of themselves. So what they're attempting to do is they want to kickstart something really fast here. And this is part of the alchemical allegory of burning something down in order to rebuild it, the phoenix rising from its ashes. And when you look at what's going on in Los Angeles, and you look back to the year 2020, and you look at a document which is talking about Los Angeles smart city by 2028, just in time for the Olympic Games, you begin to realize the dots are connecting in a lot of ways. It happened in just the right time frame that they needed it to. And could you call it a coincidence? If you really want, you could. I don't have enough faith to be a coincidence theorist, but that's beside the point. All of these things seem to always align in these ways that seem disparate and disconnected from one another, but yet it always seems to lead to some greater portion of the pre-planned agenda, which puts all these things together. So this is what I'm talking about when you see synchromystic metadata out there in the greater zeitgeist, the greater information field. You can understand they're connecting the dots. So we have this association with fire, the phoenix, the rebirth idea, the building of their new world order. We have, of course, the inauguration of Donald Trump coming up. as the new Caesar, if you want to go there with that too. And this, he's actually openly talking about expansion. Think about that. Empire expansion, taking Greenland and Panama and renaming the Gulf of Mexico, which has been the Gulf of Mexico for as long as I could remember, probably long before I was around. Think about this. So you're talking about some world-changing things that they have pre-planned here for 2025, and people are eating it up. And that's what I just don't get. No matter how many times they're shown the disingenuous nature of some of these people, particularly the political class, they still are looking at this figure and thinking somehow things are going to change or get better when he's instituting all the policies that the one worlders want, isn't he? That's what he intends to do. He's appointing people that want this same position, and yet people are okay with that. At least those on the political right are okay with that, and I don't understand. But that's just me, just pontificating there. I'll shut up now and let you talk.
I have separated myself from politics a very long time ago. I had no emotional attachment to any of it. I see all the theatrics behind it, but to a point where it's extremely obvious to me and others with eyes to see that there's level of theatrics, a high level of theatrics in politics, especially with what we've seen this last election cycle. Theological implications behind everything. It was like a battle between Jesus versus Satan, and the reaction from the global power structure after Trump was in office seems like everyone just fell into line. The previous time Trump was elected, we had all the drama, we had all the pushback. Now everybody's praising him and falling right into line with every agenda. And the people that support Trump, most of them aren't even questioning any of it. But the implications behind everything he is doing is pointing to exactly what you just said, just further solidifying this coming New World Order.
Exactly. And that's what I find like truly problematic is people have just bought into this left-right paradigm all the more. And it's disturbing because you could point out all the political corruption to them and they realize, yeah, they acknowledge there's political corruption, but their guy's going to fix it. And like he had 4 years to fix it. He didn't. And all of this, it's all theatrics. Like you said, it's all political theater. And I try pointing this out to people all the time. Likely this was all planned back at the Bilderberg meeting in 2017. The Bilderberg meeting, which was attended, by the way, in Chantilly, Virginia, by, well, our coming vice president, J.D. Vance. He was there. He was present at that Bilderberg meeting, and then he arose into prominence rather quickly thereafter, much like a young President Obama. Same kind of thing going on. He was also groomed and selected by Bilderberg prior to his election to presidency. He was a junior first-term senator, much like J.D. Vance is now, and all of a sudden he was on the presidential ticket and won the presidency. Well, it's kind of the same thing going on, except they had to have the Trump figurehead involved. So in my estimation, I think this was all planned at that Bilderberg 2017 meeting. They told Trump, hey, here's what we're going to do. You're going to get one term, and then we're going to put another guy in. We're going to put the Democrats in to roll out some of this agenda that we want rolled out that you won't get away with if you're in there because you have too much media scrutiny.
Yes.
And then you'll go back in for another 4 years to seal the deal and get it done. And Donald Trump's one of them. Like, don't let him fool you. He's not going to drain the swamp. He is the swamp. Yes. And I try telling people this all the time. And there's some very well-meaning evangelical Christians and stuff like that that seem to think that this is God's chosen guy. It's such a psychological operation and a work, and they don't see through it. And they truly and firmly believe this. No matter how much evidence you point them out with the guy, it just doesn't matter. And it's the same thing on the other side. The Democrat side is the same way. It's all just a psychological operation. They know how to work the room. Let's put it this way. They know how to divide people along ideological lines and keep them separated and fighting over things of no real importance. Does it matter if it's a left boot or a right boot that's standing on your head for eternity?
Right.
Think about that.
100%. Do you think that their apparent long game plan is coming to fruition as they want it to? Or could there be a layer of this synchromistic natural reality that is pushing against it and maybe causing problems with their rollout of this new world order?
I think they're getting a lot of resistance and pushback they weren't expecting. I think things aren't going their way. I see them panicking and trying to push forward agendas and really rush things along, whereas they used to really play the long game, the slow game with a lot of this. Now they're panicking and they're doubling down and they're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks to get things done. They're behind schedule. I mean, they have all of these different things planned for their Agenda 2030. Used to be Agenda 21. You remember that?
Yeah.
They wanted all this done and in place by the year 2000. Didn't happen that way. And now they have Agenda 2030. Things aren't lining up how they would like with that either. So they're trying to pivot and they're trying to just double down on some of the things they've gotten away with. And they're desperately trying to get things in place, all the game pieces in place, because it is a grand game to them, to get what they want out of all of this. And they're failing. And they don't know what to do with themselves. And they've really slipped in recent years. They have a lot of really ineffectual middle management running things right now. They're a victim of their own policies. Let's put it that way. All their DEI, diversity, equity, inclusivity policies and stuff like that have come back to bite them in the butt. Let's be honest about it. So a lot of these things they've done, they've really relegated off to a lot of this ineffectual middle management. And they haven't been able to achieve the things that they wanted with this because they get some pushback from people. Now, one of the big tests for all of this was the whole COVID scamdemic situation they rolled out on us. And by their own numbers, they say 69% of the world's population got at least one COVID shot. Now, that's a massive number, but that does not meet the level of the parietal split that they need in society in order to completely steamroll everybody and get the things they want done. That's the 20-80 split. So they need at least 80% of the people to go along with what they want in order for them to be effectual at doing so. So they're short 11%, and that's why they're panicking and doubling down. So even though that sounds like a huge number, they still have a massive amount of people, 31%, that did not comply the first time with them. And now that number has gone way up of those that are going to be non-compliant because they're seeing the actual harms of this rolling out in the public view, in the mainstream press, and all over the place. So now that that's going on and people distrust the system, they're going to have a lot more problems. So that's why they're trying to throw everything at the wall to see what sticks. So they've gone the route. We have these mystery drones, UFO phenomenon. They're trying to leverage that against people. We have these wildfires and we have natural disasters and we have climate change and all of these boogeyman things going on. And now terrorism has seen a resurgence after disappearing. I guess the terrorists were afraid of COVID for that number of years or whatever. But now it's all good again. So we have all of that reemerging and they're just seeing what sticks. They got to get people in this fear mindset. And now we have this rollout of the bird flu and everything else too. So it's a mess, and the economy's a mess because of all of this, and the cost of everything skyrocketed. Inflation in like ridiculous amounts in this modern time.
Now, earlier you touched on the end game for them, their ultimate desire to be immortal, possibly have their consciousness uploaded to some sort of computer mainframe somehow, however they want to achieve that immortality. But what do you think that ultimately means for the rest of humanity? Where do they want this to go?
Well, essentially, there's a couple basic premises that we could lay down here. First and foremost, the elite, these dark occultists who run things, these people who see themselves as the new gods of this place, the Olympians, they sometimes call themselves, they make it certain in no ambiguous terms that they have no place for the profane in their new age. And that's you and I. That's anybody that's not been initiated into one of their secret brotherhoods or occult fraternities. They view you as not even having a soul unless you've been initiated. And so they think they do us a favor by promulgating some of these large, massive ritual violent events upon us, these traumatic events, much like 9/11 was one, and many of these other events. They think they're doing you a favor. This is giving you a type of an initiation process and doing you the favor of unlocking your potential, your ability to recognize that you have a soul and latch onto that and maybe come to the initiation phase that they need you to come to in order to be bought into their ideology. So they think they're doing you a favor first and foremost with all of that. And they think that that's the only way for you to proceed into the next age, because they have no place for the profane there. And so the things they do to act on this affect us in that way, first and foremost. Now, secondly, with that premise being laid down, the other side of this is, if you look at the notion of transhumanism, this philosophy of transhumanism, that's not intended for everyone. The benefits and the advancements of the transhumanist technologies are not intended for everyone. This is only for the elite class to be the beneficiaries of these technologies. So what does this mean exactly? Well, I'll tell you what it means when you look at transhumanism. A pro-transhumanist YouTube channel out there called Transhumania, they have like a 4 to 5 hour long documentary on their YouTube channel. And I believe this is about 20 minutes into the documentary, if memory serves me correctly. If you look and you watch this documentary, they will tell you what transhumanism is in no uncertain terms. They call it, quote unquote, transhumanism is eugenics without coercion. That's what they say. Now, that's a pro-transhumanist YouTube channel. These are pro-transhumanists who are telling you in no uncertain terms what this is. So what does this look like? This looks like, well, you see, my relative died, but before they died, they uploaded their consciousness to the machine, and now it acts just like them. It has me thoroughly convinced that it is them living on in the computer. So people will line up to have their consciousness uploaded in this way, and in the process, it will destroy their physical form, and it will create this cheap synthetic knockoff of their personality, their existing memories, all of this stuff. But is that really the ontological self in there? Is that the I am that resides in the person? Is it the animus, the spirit, that's actually residing there? No, it's not. This is the world of shells, as I alluded to earlier. And you could look up the Kabbalistic term, the world of shells, if you want more information on that. This is the dead entity. This is the reign of dead matter, as Michael Hoffman calls it. This is the spirit of Ahriman, as Rudolf Steiner describes it. It's the hyper-materialist paradigm. It's the physical shell absent of spirit. Now, this absence of spirit, well, this leaves a gaping, wide-open void in the process here in which some type of spirit is going to manifest, but it's not going to be a human spirit. Let's put it that way. But at any rate, this is essentially what they're trying to do. This is a mass culling event. That's what transhumanism is for the commoners, the common class. You're not going to be the beneficiaries of those transhumanist technologies. They just want to actually document and keep all of your memories and your personality on file in a computer to be duplicated by a machine as best as possible and have access to all of that information, minus the spirit, minus the actual personhood being there, the individuated soul present therein. It's a type of collectivism, and it's a type of a mass culling event. Like I said, that's what transhumanism is. It's eugenics without coercion. So they intend to get rid of the bulk of humanity in this way, but still keep all of the information present in the collective minds of everyone. So this is a very nefarious type of agenda when you see it from that vantage point.
When it comes to the powers that you mentioned above humanity that are in control, as we become collectively more aware and starting to question levels of our reality, there has become a reemergence of some Gnostic understandings and possibilities, theories that our reality is completely controlled by these nefarious parasitic entities that are feeding off of us in certain ways. To what extent does that go? Do they answer to source? Are they an infiltration in our reality? Let's explore that a little bit.
All right, sounds good. So these are commonly referred to in the Gnostic teachings as the Archons. And there are many people who would have you believe that we do live on a prison planet, that this is indeed a matrix of sorts, an artificial reality, a simulation, all of this kind of thing. These all have their roots back in these Gnostic principles and Gnosticism. They're occult belief systems. This is nothing new. Remember, the Bible advises us there's nothing new under the sun. All of these ideas have been ever present here. It's just with our modern ways of thinking and the technologies we're familiar with, we could reference this in that type of a way. So we could understand it a little better in that type of a way. Well, that is not the reality we live in, but that is the reality that these dark occultists who run things and the spiritual powers controlling them and guiding and directing them in this want us to get to. That's the point they want us to get to. And this is what's called the world of shells in the Kabbalistic and Hermetic traditions. So it is that notion of pure physicality, form devoid of spirit. That's what they want here, because then that gives them the vehicle that they want in order to manifest physically here. These spiritual powers and entities that be, that right now do not belong here in this natural order. They're an abomination to this natural order. And you could look back to the Bible in Genesis chapter 6 to talk about this a little further with the fallen angels and their commingling with the daughters of men and the emergence of the Nephilim. There were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. This is a direct telling of that same type of thing. These were not entities, not beings that belong in this natural creation. And this is where the problem arises. And this is why the Great Flood is said to have happened, if you look at it from the theological perspective and also from the philosophical perspective and the occult perspective of some of these people. That is what they seem to agree upon. That was the reason for the flood, was to eliminate this abomination from the natural order. They don't belong here. Well, they're trying to build a similar thing with the transhumanist notion of things. So see, essentially, what it boils down to is the human being in and of himself is the gateway between worlds. And when you understand that, you understand our special place here in this world. We're the gateway between worlds, between the spiritual and the physical here. Now, many of these spiritual entities, they seek to manifest physically because there are certain things here that they find very desirable. So you have this notion of the walk-in in paranormal studies. It's the same type of thing that they're looking to manifest on a greater level with this transhumanist notion. So that's from the perspective of the spiritual side of this, these dark spirits that want to come into physical form here and manifest here to have this experience. They want to do so through the use of the human form. And they could only do so if the human form is devoid of spirit. Well, how does that happen? Well, that happens through this transhumanist ideology and philosophy. You upload your consciousness to the machine, you physically die. That leaves the empty shell, thus the world of shells, for them to use as a vehicle to manifest here. And that is wherein things get really kind of nefarious sounding. And I reserve the right to be totally wrong on this stuff, by the way, but it seems to me the preponderance of evidence always indicates this, no matter where you come at it from. If you come at it from the scientific paradigm, the occult paradigm, the religious paradigm, all of this. So that seems to be, in my estimation, what's going on here. You have these spiritual intelligences, forces, entities, however you want to frame them, who want to manifest here physically, and they will try their utmost to do so. And this leads into some various other aspects of things that I don't think we're prepared to go that long today. So when you look at it from the perspective and the viewpoint of the spiritual side of it, but just trying to maintain the subject here to stay on point. The synchromystic metadata around us is intended to steer us into this transhumanist paradigm, to make us buy into this concept that this is all there is physical reality. They want to lead you away from that connection back with your creator, with God. They want to diverge you from that and keep you from that relationship, that right relationship with God. Because if you have that, then you realize there's more than meets the eye here. There are spiritual realms, there are spiritual concerns that we need to keep in mind, and not just the purely, strictly physical things that they would like us to focus on.
You're right. There's a lot more we can get into. I'd love to do a part two on this. Let's close on this. Where do you think they're going with the whole UFO narrative and the psychological operation that's been ongoing for years through our entertainment, through the media, everything we've been shown about UFOs? What do you think the end game is with this?
It's hard to say for sure. They always seem to want to use the whole alien notion as a way of controlling the populace. You could go as far back as John Dewey giving a speech in 1917 talking about how all the world's differences, this was later paraphrased by Ronald Reagan several times, all the world's differences would simply come to nothing if there was an outside power or an alien invasion or something that united humanity. And I'm paraphrasing that, of course, as well. But we're all familiar with this notion. So this has been out there in the zeitgeist for a long time now, this notion of an outside alien force that will unite humanity. Now, what exactly does this look like on an operational principle? I don't know for sure. Are they really going to roll out the aliens and show us the physical alien beings and say they've come here from Zeta Reticuli or wherever else they're going to claim? Actually, it'll probably be Sirius. They're going to come from Sirius. I'll make that prediction. If they do that, they'll claim they're from the Sirius star system. And there's very occult reasons for that, but we won't go into that today. But at any rate, I don't know if they'll actually do that or if they're going another direction with this, because something I've noticed about the whole UFO phenomenon is for the very longest time, it's always been directly or indirectly associated with microbes or disease. You'll notice that if you go and you look into it. Think back to the Orson Welles radio broadcast, War of the Worlds, and actually the earlier story by H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds. What ultimately destroyed the Martians? Well, it was Earth microbes, wasn't it? Disease. And this is something I found interesting, and it first hit me back in, I think it was 2018. We did an episode of Crow 777 Radio talking about the newly formed at that time To the Stars Academy, Tom DeLonge and company, with all of that. And I was compiling the notes and seeing who he had actually on his team, a bunch of former CIA guys like Lou Elizondo and stuff like that. Yeah. But also, I found it concerning that there were at least 2 or 3 microbiologists on the To the Stars Academy team. That struck me as odd. These are studying UFO phenomena. So that's when I put the connection together in my head at that point. And I even mentioned it on air there. And then, lo and behold, a few short years later, we have the rollout of COVID after an unprecedented release in the news media in late 2019 about the Tic Tac UFO and all the disclosure that came with this. So think about that. So once again, this is more of that synchromystic metadata coming into play and this pattern recognition that I'm talking about. So maybe it has something to do with that. And of course, they're trying to hype up this bird flu thing right now, and they're trying to reinvent COVID, and they're trying to reinvent all of these new, different, novel diseases that are said to be out and about there to get people in this fear mindset. So maybe they're going to pivot with that and go that direction. I don't know. I don't have the answers. These are just observations I've made based upon the metadata I see out there in the greater information field.
Right on. Well, we're definitely in interesting times. To close out today, what advice would you give people when navigating this reality, especially when trying to find good information, when trying to prepare for all the possibilities that could be coming? What would you advise people?
I would advise people just make sure your heart's right with your creator. Make sure you have that right relationship with God. That'll guide you through more or less, but it doesn't hurt to be prepared, to maybe have like 3 weeks worth of food stored up, maybe have a little bit of goods that might help you through to survive if you need to. If you know how to grow your own food, great. Plant a little garden, do that kind of thing. Also have tools available tools and supplies like that, so you could build things or do whatever. Maybe have an alternate energy source that you could use for heat or for electricity if the need should arise. Maybe own property. That's a good thing to have too. Real estate, that's a valuable asset. Maybe some gold and silver reserves, things like that. Just keep that. It doesn't hurt to be prepared for
Right.
anything because you never know. I mean, a natural disaster or a natural disaster, you put that in air quotes, might come your way and you never can tell. I don't think they'll really go the route of taking down the entire power grid at once because that takes control firmly out of their hands. So
Mm.
I don't think they would dare do that. So if they were to take down the power grid, it would probably be in little sections at a time. So that's my estimation of the things here. So
Right on. Well, Wayne, this was great information. Thank you so much. Like I said, we'll definitely have to do this again. Before you go, remind the audience where they can find all of your content, books, podcast, all the good stuff.
all right. Thanks again, Chris. I appreciate it. You can find all of my work at www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com. And I have links over to all the various things that I've been working on. I have a Substack called the Alchemical Beacon, where you could listen to the podcast or read some articles and things like that. And like I was alluding to earlier, my friend Richard Willett and I just launched a new podcast called Synchromystic. That's out there on Spotify and YouTube as well. So that's out there for people to listen to if you want to get a little bit more of a breakdown of specifics about this Synchromystic metadata that we put out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Wayne. Like I said, we'll be doing this again. Love to talking in the future. Until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening, and we will talk again tomorrow. We'll see you then. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history. Hello friends, have you tried what may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man? C60 PurplePower. My C60 story has led me to great health mentally and physically. It's helped me personally lose weight, have more energy, and fight aging in general. You can also get C60 for your pets. Our dogs love it. They may live forever. Go check out C60 for yourself. If you use the link right in the description, you're going to get 10% off your order plus free shipping. They have some incredible new products like gummies, oils, and much more. Hello, friends. Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Have you tried intermittent fasting, low carb or ketogenic diets, cutting calories, and exercising more with no success? Book a free intro call with my friend Christian Yordanov to see how he can help you. He is a health author and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. He was on the show recently to discuss his latest book on longevity, How to Actually Live Longer, Volume 1. He understands that for many people, excess weight gain and weight loss resistance is much more complex than calories in, calories out. You may be having a hard time shedding the pounds because of hormonal and metabolic imbalances that won't respond to simply eating less and moving more. In our modern environment full of obesogenic chemicals and endocrine disruptors, xenoestrogens, and persistent organic pollutants, as well as unprecedented levels of stress, a more sophisticated approach is needed to help people like yourself achieve long-lasting results. Christian's going to help you lose weight in a safe, sustainable, and stress-free manner. He doesn't use severe calorie restriction, low-carb or ketogenic diets, intermittent or water fasting, or intense exercise regimens with his clients.
Instead, his focus is on improving diet quality, addressing hormonal and metabolic imbalances, reducing stress, and helping you build the habits and lifestyle that will allow you to achieve your body composition goals and transform your health. In addition, he's going to help you boost your detoxification system because this is critical to get right before you start losing a significant amount of weight. Christian will help you get healthy to lose weight. That is the right way to do it. This is not a quick fix, but a comprehensive strategy that'll help you achieve your desired body composition in a safe, free, and stress-free manner. If you are done with the fat diets and intermittent starvation and are ready for real solutions, the support you need is available. Click that link in the description to learn more and book your free call with Christian to see how he can help you. Make sure you mention FKN when booking, and he will add extra free consultation sessions to your package.